What if the moment you were trying to escape from your past walked right into your backyard? The air was still that evening, the kind of stillness that comes after you've run too far from everything that once defined you. Claire sat in the backyard of her small Maplewood home, her knees pulled close, a coffee mug resting on the grass beside her. She'd moved here to start over, to breathe again, to forget the sound of a man's voice that once promised forever. The quiet town had become her safe bubble, her second chance. But sometimes even silence can feel too loud when your memories won't let you rest. Her small backyard looked peaceful. Wooden fence, a swing hanging from a maple tree, a table covered with old books and half-dead plants. It was her space, her little corner of healing, but inside, she still carried the ache of unanswered messages and the dull ache of being left behind. She had been strong for too long, pretending that loneliness was freedom. The evening sky began to fade into orange and violet, the wind brushing gently against her hair. Claire exhaled slowly, telling herself she was fine. But deep down, she missed laughter, missed the feeling of being seen. Just as her thoughts began to drift, she heard the soft creak of her backyard gate. Her heart jumped. Nobody ever came here. When she turned, her neighbor Daniel was standing by the open gate. His hand rested awkwardly on the fence, as if unsure whether to walk in or leave. He looked different than she remembered, his hair slightly messy, a faint tiredness under his eyes. She had seen him before from afar, walking his dog or unloading groceries, but they had never really spoken. Now standing there, he looked like someone who didn't belong anywhere either. "Hey," he said quietly, almost like a question. "Sorry, your gate was open. I didn't mean to startle you." Claire blinked, caught between politeness and confusion. "Oh, no, it's okay," she managed, forcing a smile. "I didn't even realize it was open." He nodded, hesitating a little longer. "I just wanted to ask something." His voice had that tone, half unsure, half carrying a story it didn't want to tell. Claire motioned toward the table. "Sure, go ahead." He stepped in, his shoes crunching softly against the gravel path. The air between them felt heavy yet strangely calm. "I heard music coming from your yard the other night," he said. "Piano, I think." "You were playing?" Claire looked down at her fingers. "Yeah, just trying to remember a few old songs." Daniel smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "My wife used to play those same songs. Before she—" He stopped, his throat tightening. "Before she passed." The word hung there like a fragile secret. Claire's heart softened instantly. She could tell he wasn't the kind of man who talked about pain easily. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." He nodded once, looking at the grass instead of her. "It's been a year. I thought I was fine." Then I heard that melody again, and suddenly, it felt like she was here. The wind rustled between them, carrying the faint scent of rain. Claire didn't know what to say. She understood loss too well, how it hides behind ordinary days, pretending to be gone until one small thing breaks the silence. "I didn't mean to bother you," Daniel said softly. "I just wanted to know where it came from." She shook her head. "You're not bothering me." Her voice was gentle, honest. "It's nice to have someone notice. People usually don't." He smiled this time, small, real, tired. For a second, the air around them changed. It wasn't just two neighbors talking. It was two lonely hearts recognizing something familiar. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself. "I was just sitting out here. You can join me." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, if you don't mind." She poured him a cup from the flask beside her. They sat across from each other, the table between them, the quiet filling in everything they didn't say. The conversation started slow, safe topics, small laughs, stories about how quiet the neighborhood was. But slowly, it shifted. He told her about his wife, how she loved storms, how she used to sing in the kitchen while burning pancakes, how one day she simply didn't wake up. His voice cracked once, then steadied. He didn't cry, but his silence between words said enough. Claire listened, not with pity, but understanding. She told him about her past, too, not all of it, just enough. About a man she thought she'd marry, about how love sometimes fades without a reason. about the day she packed her car and drove until the pain quieted down. They shared stories as if trading broken pieces of their lives, both surprised at how easy it was. When the light began to dim completely, Daniel glanced toward the sky. "You ever feel like some places heal you just by letting you sit still?" Claire smiled faintly. "I think that's why I moved here." He nodded, then looked at her with an expression that seemed to hold both warmth and sorrow. "You have that same peace," he said quietly. "The kind people find after a storm." For a moment, her heart stumbled. She didn't know how to reply. No one had said something that kind to her in a long time. Then Daniel stood, brushing the dirt off his jeans. "I should go," he said softly. "Already?" she asked, surprised. He smiled. "If I stay longer, I might start believing I'm okay again." She laughed lightly, not sure if it was meant as a joke. But then she saw his hand, the faint glint of a silver ring still resting on his finger. Not new, not polished, just there. Her smile faded slightly. He noticed. "I haven't taken it off yet," he said, his tone almost apologetic. "I guess part of me still thinks she might come back if I don't." Claire's chest tightened. She wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but sometimes silence says more than words. Daniel stepped back toward the gate, pausing once more. "Thanks for the coffee," he said softly. "And for listening. You didn't have to." She smiled gently. "I wanted to." He nodded, his gaze holding hers for a heartbeat too long. "Good night, Claire." "Good night, Daniel." The gate creaked shut behind him. The sound echoed in the quiet yard, leaving a strange emptiness behind. She watched him walk across the grass to his house, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if carrying something heavy. When he disappeared into the shadows, Claire looked down at her hands. They were trembling, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Connection. The night deepened. The stars appeared one by one, scattered across the dark sky. Claire sat back in her chair, the cool breeze brushing against her face. She replayed every word, every pause, every look. Something about that encounter had shifted something small but real inside her. For the first time since she'd moved here, the silence didn't hurt. It just waited. But as she stood to go inside, she noticed something strange. A piece of folded paper lay on the table near his empty cup. She hadn't seen him leave it. Her heart thudded as she opened it. Inside, written in neat handwriting, were just a few words. "Sometimes, music finds the hearts that need it most." No signature. Just that line. She stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to smile or cry. It felt like something had begun, something uncertain, unplanned but alive. And then, as she turned toward her house, she heard it again, soft piano music drifting faintly from somewhere across the fence. The same melody she had played nights ago. But now someone else was playing it. Her eyes widened. Daniel. She stepped closer to the fence, her pulse quickening. The notes were imperfect, trembling, emotional. He was playing her song. And just as she leaned in to listen, just as she felt the warmth of something new rising in her chest, the music stopped, then silence, only the sound of the wind and the faint echo of a door closing next door. Claire stood frozen, staring at the fence, heart racing. She didn't know why, but something told her this was just the beginning. Something was about to change again. Why did his voice sound like a confession? The next morning came quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy with questions you didn't ask the night before. Claire couldn't stop thinking about that note. She had placed it on her kitchen counter beside the mug Daniel used, reading it over and over as if the words could explain themselves. Sometimes music finds the hearts that need it most. It felt personal, gentle, almost like a message meant only for her. She told herself not to overthink. He was just being kind, a neighbor, nothing more. But every time she tried to convince herself, that melody replayed in her mind, the way it drifted over the fence, like a voice trying to reach her without words. That afternoon, while watering her small garden, Claire heard footsteps on gravel. She turned and froze. Daniel stood by the fence again. Same gray shirt, same quiet eyes. He looked hesitant, holding something small in his hands. A piano keychain. "Hey," he said softly. "About last night. I hope the music didn't bother you." Claire smiled slightly. "Bother me? I think it saved me." He chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "I hadn't played in years. But hearing you play, it reminded me of her. And maybe that I'm still here." There it was again, that quiet pain behind his words. "Not loud, but deep. Music has a way of doing that," Claire replied gently. "It brings back ghosts we think we've buried." Daniel's gaze lifted. "Sometimes I wish I could talk to her one last time," he murmured. "Tell her I'm trying, that I still wear this ring, not because I can't let go, but because I don't know how to start over." Claire said nothing. Some emotions don't need answers, only space. She stepped closer, and for a second their eyes met. It wasn't romantic yet. It was two people standing inside the same silence, understanding it without breaking it. Then he held out the keychain. "I thought you might like this. It's from an old piano she loved. I kept it, but maybe it's time someone else has it." Claire's hand trembled as she took it. "Are you sure?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. She always believed music should keep moving. I think she'd want that. It was such a simple moment, but something about it left her breathless. The gesture was small, but the meaning was enormous. She wanted to ask him how long it had been since he'd smiled like this. She wanted to tell him she understood. How memories can both comfort and crush you. But instead, she just whispered, "Thank you." Daniel smiled faintly and looked around the backyard. "You've made this place peaceful," he said. "It feels alive," Claire laughed lightly. "It's trying. I keep forgetting to water half the plants." He smirked. Then his tone softened. "Peace is rare. You should hold on to it." The words lingered in her chest long after he left. Over the next few days, their paths crossed more often. At the mailbox, on the street, sometimes just by accident. But each time there was that same quiet pull between them. Not love. Not yet, just comfort. Something unspoken. One evening, the power went out in the neighborhood. The whole street was dark, except for a few candles flickering inside Claire's kitchen. She was sitting by the window when a flashlight beam swept across her backyard. Then came a knock on the fence. "Claire, you okay?" Daniel's voice. She laughed. "Yeah, just waiting for civilization to return." "Mind if I wait with you?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Sure." He climbed through the gate with an apologetic grin. They sat on the porch steps, candles flickering beside them. The night was unusually quiet. No traffic, no hum of electricity. Just rain in the distance and the sound of two people breathing the same air. Daniel spoke first. "You ever think about how silence can feel louder than noise?" Claire looked at him. "Every day." He nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "After she passed, I couldn't stand the quiet. I'd turn the TV on just to pretend someone was home. But lately, it feels different. I don't hate the silence anymore." She understood what he meant, because she felt it too. That strange shift when loneliness turns into something else. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. A soft rain began to fall. Daniel reached out his hand, catching a few drops. "She used to love this," he murmured. "Sitting outside in the rain. Said it made her feel clean, free." Claire smiled sadly. "She sounds like someone worth missing." He looked at her then, really looked, as if searching for something behind her calm expression. "What about you?" he asked. "Who did you leave behind when you came here?" Claire hesitated. For a moment she wanted to lie, to say no one, but something about his honesty made it impossible. "Someone I thought I'd marry," she said finally. "He wanted a different life. I wanted peace. Turns out, peace came with loneliness." Daniel's eyes softened. "I'm sorry," she shook her head. "Don't be. Sometimes you have to lose everything to realize you were meant for something simpler." The rain grew heavier, and soon they were both soaked, laughing like children as thunder rumbled above. For the first time in years, Claire felt alive. The world wasn't perfect, but it was honest. She looked at Daniel, water dripping from his hair, and felt something stir, a quiet, fragile warmth she wasn't ready to name. Then, without thinking, he reached for her hand. Their fingers brushed, just once, and everything inside her stilled. But then he froze. His smile faded. His hand dropped back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have—" "It's okay," Claire said softly, though her heart was pounding. He stood up abruptly, running a hand through his wet hair. "I thought I was ready to feel something again," he said, voice low. "But maybe I'm not." "Not yet." Claire rose too. "You don't have to apologize." He looked at her for a long moment, eyes full of conflict. "You remind me of hope," he said quietly, "and that scares me." The words hit her like a gentle wound. She didn't know how to respond. He stepped back toward the gate. "I should go before I make this more complicated." "Daniel," she started. But he was already walking away. The rain poured harder, drumming against the fence as he disappeared into the darkness. Claire stood there for a moment, shivering, staring at the place where he'd just been. Her heart felt heavy, confused, alive, all at once. She walked back inside, peeled off her soaked sweater, and sat near the candlelight. The piano keychain lay on the table beside her, glinting faintly in the dim light. She picked it up, running her thumb over it. Why did it feel like the story between them had already begun, only for him to close the book halfway through? She wanted to be angry, but she couldn't. Grief doesn't end with one conversation. Healing doesn't happen after one night. She understood that better than anyone. Still, a small part of her hoped he'd knock again, or leave another note, or play that melody once more. But days passed. Then a week. The house next door stayed quiet. One night, unable to sleep, Claire sat at her piano again. Her fingers hesitated on the keys, then began to play, the same melody Daniel had played that night. Soft, slow, full of ache. Halfway through the song, her eyes filled with tears. Not because she was sad, but because she missed something she never really had. And then, a sound. A faint knock on the fence. Claire froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The piano fell silent. Another knock. Louder this time. She stood, heart pounding, walking slowly to the back door. The rain had started again, tapping lightly against the windows. She opened the door and stepped into the night. The yard was dark, empty, except for one thing. A single candle burning weakly on her table, and beside it, a folded piece of paper, already damp from the rain. She picked it up with trembling fingers, unfolding it under the faint light from her porch. It read, "I heard the song again. Maybe it's time I stop running from what's left." No name, no explanation. But she didn't need one. She looked toward his darkened house, one window faintly glowing upstairs, and for the first time, she smiled through her tears. Something was changing. Not fast, not loud, but real. Can two broken hearts ever meet without breaking each other further? Claire hadn't seen Daniel in nearly 2 weeks. The silence between their houses felt different now. Not heavy, just waiting. Every morning she'd glance toward his porch while pretending not to. Every night she'd pause by her piano, wondering if he was listening. The note he left. "Maybe it's time I stop running from what's left," still lay on her table. Slightly wrinkled from rain, but impossible to throw away. That Sunday afternoon, the sky was restless, dark clouds rolling in, wind brushing through the maple trees. Claire was sitting in the yard, lost in thought, when she heard it again, the creak of her gate. She turned quickly. Daniel stood there holding a small box, raindrops starting to touch his shoulders. "Hey," he said quietly, voice careful, almost nervous. "Hey," she replied, standing up. "You disappeared." He nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, I needed time to think." The rain started to fall lightly, but neither of them moved. "And?" she asked softly. He looked down at the box in his hands. "I found something that belongs to you. Sort of." He opened it, revealing an old photo, blurry but familiar. It was her backyard, taken from across the fence. In the frame, she was sitting at her piano, eyes closed, sunlight catching her hair. Claire's eyes widened. When did you— The first week you moved here, Daniel said, almost embarrassed. I didn't mean to take it. My wife used to take pictures of people who looked peaceful. After she passed, I found this on her camera. You must have moved in right before she— His voice trailed off. For a moment, neither spoke. The realization hit Claire slowly. Daniel had seen her before they'd even met. His wife had taken that photo. The connection between them was older than they thought. She took this? Claire whispered. He nodded. She said you look like someone who'd been through something, but still smiled. A tear slipped down Claire's cheek. She was right. Daniel smiled faintly. I didn't understand it back then, but now, looking at it, I think she was trying to tell me something. The rain thickened, drops falling faster now. Claire motioned toward the porch. Come inside before we both drown. They sat under the awning, wrapped in the sound of rainfall. The space between them felt charged, not with tension but recognition, like two souls realizing they'd been orbiting each other for longer than they knew. Daniel ran a hand through his damp hair. You know what's strange? He said softly. When I first lost her, I kept searching for signs, anything to tell me I wasn't alone. But lately, I think she sent me here, to find peace again. Claire looked at him quietly. Maybe she sent you to find yourself again. He met her eyes. Steady, deep, full of something that scared and comforted her at once. And maybe I found both. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. The rain soon turned into a downpour. Daniel laughed under his breath. Guess we're stuck here for a while, Claire smiled. There are worse places to be. He looked at her then, really looked. The kind of look that lingers, that sees what others miss. You ever wonder, he said softly, how two people can be broken in such different ways, and still fit together somehow? Her breath caught. I think that's what healing looks like, she whispered. A rumble of thunder filled the air. The rain fell harder, washing over everything, blurring the world outside. Claire watched it, lost in the rhythm. Then she realized Daniel's hand was resting near hers, close enough to feel the warmth but not quite touching. Neither moved. He glanced down, then up at her, eyes questioning. She didn't pull away. Slowly, his fingers brushed against hers, hesitant, trembling. It wasn't romance. Not yet, it was permission. It was maybe. But just as she started to breathe easier, Daniel suddenly withdrew his hand. His face changed, distant, pained. What's wrong? Claire asked softly. He shook his head, standing abruptly. I thought I was ready, but every time I feel something, I hear her voice. Claire rose too, raindrops hitting her arms again. You don't have to fight it, she said. She's not keeping you from living. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. I promised her I wouldn't forget, that I'd always love her. Claire took a small step closer. Loving her doesn't mean you can't live again, Daniel. He turned away, hands trembling. But what if living again feels like betrayal? The pain in his voice was raw, real. Claire wanted to reach for him, but she didn't. She knew what guilt could do, how it builds walls even love can't climb. Then maybe, she said quietly, it's time you forgive yourself for surviving. He closed his eyes. For a long moment, the only sound was rain. When he finally looked at her again, his eyes were wet, not from the rain. You make it sound easy, he whispered. It's not, she said, but it starts somewhere. He nodded slowly, as if absorbing her words. Then he exhaled and gave a tired smile. You always say the right thing. She smiled faintly back. No, just what I wish someone had said to me once. They stood like that for a while, watching the storm soften into drizzle. Then, as the last drops fell, Daniel stepped closer, close enough that Claire could feel his breath. Claire, he said softly, what if we're both just trying to fix something that isn't broken? Just bruised. Her heart thudded. Then maybe we don't fix it, she whispered. Maybe we just hold it until it stops hurting. He smiled at that, but his eyes still carried shadows. You make it sound so simple, she tilted her head. Sometimes simple is the hardest thing. Daniel opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket. The sudden noise shattered the moment. He glanced at the screen. His expression shifted instantly. Claire frowned. "Everything okay?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "It's from her sister." She froze. "She found some of my wife's things in an old storage box," he said, voice shaking. "Photos, letters. She wants me to come by." The words hung in the air like a storm waiting to return. Claire felt her heart tighten. "That's good," she said softly. "Maybe it'll give you closure." He nodded, but his eyes were distant again, lost somewhere between past and present. "Yeah, closure." He said the word like it didn't quite fit. The rain had stopped. The world looked washed, quiet again. Daniel slipped his phone back into his pocket. "I should go," he said, stepping toward the gate. Claire's heart sank. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." She forced a smile. "Then go. You need this." He nodded. "I'll stop by before I leave." She wanted to say don't go, but she didn't. Some people need to face their ghosts before they can see the living. He paused by the gate, his back turned, then said quietly, "You ever feel like the universe keeps giving you second chances just to see if you'll be brave this time?" Claire's voice barely rose above the wind. "Every day." He looked at her one last time, eyes full of things he didn't say, then left. The gate closed softly behind him. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat by the window staring at his dark house. For the first time in years, she prayed, not for herself, but for him. That he'd find peace, that he'd come back. The next morning came gray and quiet. She waited by her porch with 2 cups of coffee, watching the street. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, no sign of him. By noon, she realized he wasn't coming. Disappointment pricked at her chest, but she forced herself to smile. Maybe he needed more time. Healing never followed schedules. Then, a sound. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It read, "Found something I wasn't ready to see. Can we talk when I get back? There's something I need to tell you." Her pulse quickened. She typed back quickly, "Of course. I'll be here." But before she could hit send, the message vanished. The app showed unsent message, and just like that, it was gone. Claire stared at the screen, heart racing, fingers cold. What had he found? Why did he unsend it? She stepped outside, looking toward his house again. The gate was closed. The car was gone. The wind rustled through the trees, whispering questions she couldn't answer. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled again, quiet but coming closer. And Claire stood there, holding her phone, staring at the empty street, realizing something deep in her chest. Sometimes, storms don't end. They just pause, long enough to make you believe in sunlight again. Sometimes love doesn't return the way you expect. It arrives quieter, gentler, and years too late. The morning after Daniel's message vanished, Claire woke up with a strange ache in her chest. The kind that feels like missing someone you were never allowed to love. She tried not to check her phone, but every few minutes she did anyway, hoping for a new message, an explanation, anything. Nothing came. Days passed. The house next door stayed silent. His car didn't return. The light in his porch remained off. At night, the empty driveway glowed under the street lamp, looking lonelier than ever. Claire told herself he just needed time, that maybe he was visiting his late wife's family, sorting through memories too painful to face alone. Still, every evening she found herself sitting by her piano, staring at the fence between them. That thin wooden wall had once felt like safety. Now it felt like distance. Then one Friday morning, as she watered her plants, she noticed something new. A small brown envelope slipped under the gate. Her heart jumped. She knelt to pick it up, hands trembling before she even opened it. Inside was a folded note and a black and white photograph. The note read, "Some stories don't end. They just wait for courage." And in the photo, Daniel, younger, smiling beside his wife, standing in front of a cabin surrounded by snow. But behind them, faintly visible in the background, was something unexpected. A piano. Her piano. Claire blinked, heart pounding. It was unmistakable. Same design, same carved edges. How could that be? She rushed inside and stared at her piano, as if seeing it for the first time. It had come with the house when she bought it. The old lady who sold her the property said it had been left by the previous owners. Now she knew who that was. Daniel's wife. Her breath caught. The music she'd played, the melody that brought Daniel to her yard. It had been his wife's song. Suddenly everything made sense. The photo, the connection, the way he looked at her the first night they spoke. It wasn't coincidence. It was history repeating itself in a softer form. But why had he sent the picture now? What did it mean? Before she could think further, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Claire, it's Daniel. I'm back in town. Can I come over? Her pulse raced. She typed back quickly. Of course. Within minutes, the gate creaked open. Daniel stepped inside, looking tired but lighter somehow. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled. But his eyes, they held something new. Not grief, not guilt, just peace. Hi, he said softly. Hi, she breathed. You left so suddenly. I know. I'm sorry. He glanced around the yard, smiling faintly. Everything looks the same. Except you, she frowned. Me? He nodded. You look stronger, calmer. She laughed quietly. I should be the one saying that. He walked closer, holding another envelope. I found something at her sister's house. Something you should see. He handed it to her. Inside was an old letter, folded and yellowed with age. At the top, in delicate handwriting, it read, For Daniel, if you ever feel lost. Claire hesitated. You're sure you want me to read this? He nodded. It's the reason I came back. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was elegant, tender. My love, if you ever find yourself searching for me in music, remember that songs are not meant to keep us stuck in time. They are bridges, from what was to what still can be. If you hear our song again, don't stop it. Follow it. It means life is calling you forward. Don't let my memory be your ending. Let it be your beginning. Claire looked up, tears stinging her eyes. Daniel was already crying quietly. I didn't know she wrote this, he said. I thought holding on was love. But maybe letting go is. She took his hand gently. She sounds like she loved you enough to set you free. He smiled faintly. Yeah, she always did. They stood there for a while, silent, just holding hands under the soft afternoon light. Then Claire whispered, The piano. It was hers, wasn't it? Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, we donated it when she got sick. I never thought I'd see it again. But then, there it was. In your yard, playing her song. She shook her head in disbelief. So it wasn't just chance we met? He smiled sadly. No. It never was. Something shifted then. Not like lightning, not sudden or loud, but like the quiet click of two puzzle pieces finally fitting together. They sat on the porch, the envelope between them. Daniel told her about the trip, how he'd visited his wife's grave, read the letter aloud, and finally felt ready to stop apologizing for being alive. Claire listened, her heart both aching and healing at once. I thought love ended when she died, he said softly. But maybe it just changed shape, Claire nodded. Love never leaves. It just finds new rooms to live in. The wind stirred around them, gentle and cool. Daniel looked at her, a question forming in his eyes. Do you think two people can start again even after they've both been through hell? She smiled. Only if they stop trying to erase the scars. He exhaled, almost laughing. You always say things like that. Like you've been carrying my thoughts before I even think them. She looked at him quietly. Maybe that's what it means to be connected. For the first time, Daniel reached for her hand without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they'd been waiting years to find the right fit. But just when peace seemed to finally settle, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He frowned. Everything okay? Claire asked. He glanced at the screen, confusion spreading across his face. It's from the hospital. Her stomach dropped. What? He hesitated. It's about her sister. She was in a car accident on her way to deliver the rest of the things. They said she's stable but asking for me. Claire felt her heart squeeze. Do you need to go? He nodded. I have to. She's the only family my wife had left. She nodded quickly. Go, don't worry about me. He looked at her, eyes soft but filled with something unresolved. I'll come back. I promise. Daniel, she said quietly, you don't have to promise. Just come back when your heart tells you to. He smiled weakly. You always know what to say. Then he turned, walked toward the gate, and was gone once again. That night, Claire sat alone on the porch, staring at the photo and letter. The candlelight flickered against the piano's polished surface, reflecting both the past and present in the same soft glow. She touched the keys, playing the same melody, but this time it didn't sound sad. It sounded like hope, learning how to breathe again. She didn't know if Daniel would return soon, or if fate had another pause planned between them. But she knew this. Something had changed forever. The world didn't feel empty anymore. The silence no longer hurt. Still, just before she went inside, she noticed something strange. A shadow by the fence, faint but there. Someone standing still, watching, quiet, unmoving. Her breath caught. Daniel? She called softly. No answer. She took a few steps forward, heart racing. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. When she reached the fence, there was nothing, just the dark street and the sound of the night breeze. But then she looked down. A new note lay on the grass. Small, folded. She picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, in Daniel's handwriting, were just 4 words. Don't stop the music. Her heart pounded. He couldn't have left it. He'd been gone for hours. She turned toward the house, the wind whispering softly through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled again, low, quiet, like a warning. Claire stood there under the darkening sky, the note clutched in her hand, her heart torn between peace and mystery. Maybe it wasn't Daniel. Maybe it was a message from somewhere else, from someone else. And as she looked at the piano through her window, one single key pressed down by itself with a faint click. Her breath froze. The melody began again.